God is making all things new, all the time. Since the day of creation, metaphorically speaking, things have evolved, grown, changed, iterated, morphed, constantly. And we, the people of God, created in God's image, have a role in that. God, the Creator, created us to be creators, to make all things new. In Isaiah's day, the 8th century BC, when the kingdom of Israel was under attack, these were dark days. They were not sure if they would survive. The prophet reminds the people that God is making all things new. 8th century BC. I have a couple examples, not quite that old, from our time in Greece. First stop, Athens. We had a hotel in the neighborhood Plaka near the Acropolis, thanks to our very skilled travel agent, Dan Plasman. On both sides of the building, there are ruins in process of being restored. Columns from thousands of years ago. Down the block is Hadrian's Gate, dating back to the 2nd century AD, a remnant of Roman rule. From the balcony of our room, we could see the Acropolis on the Parthenon on the Acropolis lit up. The Parthenon, a temple dedicated to the goddess Athena for victory in the war against the Persians in the 5th century BC. That's the picture on your program. Its decorative sculptures are considered some of the high points of classical Greek art, an enduring symbol of ancient Greece, Western civilization, and democracy. There's not one straight line in the whole of it. While it looks perfectly straight, in order for a building that massive to look straight, it has to be curved. So the columns all bend in 8 inches. If you stand at one of the long ends and you're looking at someone on the other long end, you can only see them above their knees because the base is a dome. The columns are curvilinear, I think that's the right word, with a larger circumference at the base than at the top. Each of those columns weighs 70 tons. 70 tons. And each cylinder that makes up the 70-ton column is unique. Imagine what happens when they've toppled over and you have to try to figure out which one goes with which one. Which happened during an explosion. Greece has been independent since the revolution against the Ottoman Empire as of 1830. And since 1975, there have been efforts to restore the Parthenon and other temples and buildings on the Acropolis. The scaffolding was taken down just a few weeks before we were there, which we had no idea. But people were saying, it looks like new. It was in print. It looks so new. It's interesting to me that the people of Greece, who are 90% Greek Orthodox, are interested in restoring a temple to a goddess. Isn't that remarkable? They could easily let it fall down. It takes a lot of money to do that kind of restoration. And those folks that we talk to in Greece, at the local eateries and the shopping places, have strong feelings about their country and a deep pride. And they have an ability to not be estranged from one another. Democracy is alive and well there. It occurs to me that it's something our country seems to struggle with. We don't want to admit our history, the genocide we committed to indigenous folks, or the slavery of the people on whose backs was built our economy. I wonder what we need in the center of our cities, like the lynching monument in Georgia, teepees of some kind, stolpersteins like the brass markers in Germany remembering the murdered Jews. In our faith, we have a symbol. The most prominent symbol of our faith is a cross. It's a symbol of how the empire murdered people who challenged their authoritarian rule. It focuses on the force of evil to get rid of anything that challenges it. That the cross is so central to our history makes me wonder its impact on our participation in the Crusades. Why is it that we think we can just get rid of anything that threatens us? If we want an image that signifies the power of love, we ought to point more importantly to an empty tomb, the symbol of the power of life and love to overcome the force of evil and fear. But how do you put an empty tomb on a necklace? How do we remember that all things are being made new? Second stop, Meteora. Meteora is a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1988. There were originally 24 monasteries built on these huge pillars of rock. They average 1,300 feet above sea level, some of them lower than that and some of them higher than that. And 6 of the original 24 monasteries are still functional. The Great Meteoron, Varlam, St. Nicholas, Rusino, Holy Trinity, and St. Stephen. They're still active monasteries. 29 nuns live in 2 of the monasteries, and 10 monks in the other 4. It's a tough recruit. The name Meteora relates back to a meteor. It means lofty or elevated, suspended between heaven and earth. And when you get up there, we visited all 6 of them, that's how it feels. Like the buildings grow right out of the rocks. And so many questions, like how the heck did they get all that stuff up there? In 2 of the monasteries, there remains the remnants of a lift, a pulley system that turned, that was connected to a hook. And on the hook was a giant net. Yeah, think fishing net, but with heavier rope. The stuff was loaded into the net, and then the pulley system turned, and the net was lifted up into the buildings. And then how did they get the stuff up there for the pulley system? It's pretty amazing what these folks were willing to do. But there's something in the human spirit about that, isn't there? The need to reach up out of the ordinary, a desire to be connected to what is larger than life, an initiative to be part of something bigger, something that gives life meaning. We had to do some planning because the monasteries are not open during this off-season. So we had to consider that it takes some energy to get up to them, an average of 200 or more steep and sometimes rocky steps and walking paths, but it's worth it. I will admit that the first one we went to was St. Stephen's. It's one of the monasteries where the women live, and I bawled my eyes out. You go inside the worship space, and it's so beautiful, and there are icons on every surface, and the candle holders are gold and beautiful, and you know everything is ancient, and the souls and the people that lived there and worshiped there, and to be in that sort of place is just overwhelming. Dan probably wondered what was wrong with me. The icons depict, someday I'm going to have Linda Neerman explain this during a service. They depict the stories, and the way they're painted has symbolism. They depict the stories of the Bible, the ancient traditions, but also the Greek heroes. And then they also depict what happens to those who don't follow the way. And there are monsters and devils and all kind of nefarious creatures. Our faith story is compelling. We believe that in the history of the world, God or love or the good reigns. Humanity has a choice, as Zen says, to flourish within it as people of faith or not, and to live in hell. We need inspiring places to be reminded of these truths, places like this sanctuary where for decades people have come to hear that story of good news, that death is not the end, that love wins. We need to experience joy and hope and awe to overcome times of despair and frustration and injustice. We need to gather as a community to celebrate and sing and pray and remember together. We need to be inspired and to reconnect regularly with the holy. To what is the next right thing? To what next right thing do we aspire? Stop 3, Monemvasia, the Gibraltar of Greece. Monemvasia was originally a fortification built on a rock that is also an island. Recently, they put a roadway in so that you can more easily get from one to the other, and the rock is called Old Town, and the town that grew up on the mainland is called New Town. We stayed in Old Town. Old Town has 2 parts. The upper town is all the ruins, and believe me, it's not an easy climb to get 500 feet above sea level up to those ruins, but we did it. And it's magnificent. And you can see why they built there, because you can see the surrounding waters, so they could tell if there was some marauding, wayfaring group coming after them. The upper town is the ruins. The lower town on the rock is what used to be a village. And at one point in 30 BC, 30,000 people lived on this rock. Today there are 10. 10 people live on the rock full time. There are no vehicles. It's dangerous in the winter because everything's always wet. There are no medical services. It's not a nice place to live. So one woman we talked to in a shop said, there are 10 people left. 2 of the families have families who live in Newtown said to their family members in Old Town who are there full time, you can't stay here another winter. We fear for you. So that leaves 8. The hotel where we stayed is part of the rock, the lower town on the rock, and those hotels and eateries and shops were renovated or restored ancient homes. We asked the woman managing our hotel if she ever lived on the rock. And she said, yeah, when I was young, I did it for a spell. But if you want to have kids or dogs or a garden, no place to be. Monemvasia is a beautiful place. I highly recommend a visit there. I spent a couple days, the majority of them on the balcony in the sun, and the most work I had to do was swat away the flies. And Monemvasia reminded me of many European churches. Churches that are more like museums than churches because they are literally museums. The faith communities that existed there for a time had not stayed relevant or vital to the average person, especially not families. They didn't see the need to pass along their deep, rich faith to the next generation. There's clearly value in traveling to other places, to engage with folks from other cultures, to have to live, if even for a couple weeks, with some discomfort about where you are and where you have to go to do what, and how to behave, and how to say please, parakalo, and how to say thank you, efharisto, and how to say you're welcome, parakalo. Those are the 3 words I know. Oh, kalimera. It's often difficult to see as a community the new ways that God is working among us. It's easier to see in our context the regression, the backward slides in the day-to-day going on in our social context. But Isaiah and the Greeks and the changes in the seasons and the community that gathers regularly in this place are reminders that God is always doing something new. We're really glad to be back.